Good morning, guys. Welcome back to a new video. I hope you're all doing really well. Today's task is one of my toughest challenges yet. Today I'm going to be working on the stairwell up to the loft conversion. Today's task is going to be to plaster this wall. Now, this is quite the wall to plaster. It's pretty big, probably one of the biggest walls I would have plastered. But the biggest challenge is how tall it is. As I go down the stairs, it's harder to reach. So it is going to be quite the challenge. We also plasterboarded this wall when we were quite new to plastering. So, I mean, just look at it. It is patchwork, honestly. And then before anything else, I'm going to have to seal those boards because we put them up, I would say, close to 2 years ago now. That is the first job on the list. But before that, we're going to need to scrim the joins. This is a roll of scrim tape. I got this from Easy Mix. It's a wide one and it's basically just a roll of mesh tape. It's self-adhesive, so it sticks directly to the plasterboard, and because of the mesh structure, it stops the plaster from cracking in the future on the joins because it's a stress point. So I'm going to need a lot of this today because I've got lots of joins, so let's get on with that and then SBRing the boards. So all I'm doing here is just rolling out the tape, sticking it over the joins in the plasterboards, and then cutting it off with a Stanley knife. The tape is self-adhesive, so you don't need to use any glue or anything like that. All you need to do is cover all of the joins. Try and make sure you've got it quite evenly spread out across the join. Some people also scrim over the screw holes, but personally I don't think it's necessary. However, it is most definitely necessary to scrim each and every join. Please do not skip this step. This is the SBR that I'm using. It's from Everbuild. I'm going to water this down probably to about a 50-50 ratio, and then I'll apply it to the plasterboards using a paint roller. The reason for adding this SBR is because the boards are over 2.5 years old. And when plasterboards are old, they increase their suction level. So what that means is when I put the plaster on the wall, it's going to absorb all of the moisture out of the plaster mixture really quickly. And it's just going to mean that the plaster goes off and it's going to start to pick up and I'm not going to get a smooth finish. It's not necessary to SBR new boards, but because these are quite old, I'm not taking any risks. You can just apply the SBR just like you would apply paint to a wall, and you can see that it's sinking into the plasterboards quite quickly here, which I think is a sign that it was definitely necessary to do this step. Like I said earlier, it's not necessary on new plasterboards. However, if in doubt, I highly recommend that you do SBR. However, you need to make sure that the SBR is completely dry before you can think about starting to plaster. I have scrimmed the wall, I have SBR'd the wall. It's time to start plastering. So the first thing I need to do is go and get my multi-finish bags in from the car, and then it'll be time to get a mix on. Okay, so I'm ready to mix up now. I have got another video where I've kind of gone through everything and how I mix the plaster, so I'll link that in the description box if you wanted to have a look at it. But in short, I've got my multi-finish. I have got my extra time. I'll also link this in the bio. I've got a drill to mix, paddle to mix. I've then got my hawk, my trowel and my bucket trowel. Plastering bucket full of water. I've got a secondary bucket which has also got some water in, and then I've got a third bucket just to chuck my tools in so I don't get the step messy. But other than that, it's time to get a mix on. Add your water to the bucket first and mix in your extra time sachet before adding your plaster. Once the extra time is fully dissolved, it's time to add the gypsum, and then you want to mix it with either your paddle mixer or your drill very thoroughly until there are absolutely no more lumps visible. This is the kind of consistency that I like to work with. I know for a lot of people this will be a little bit too wet, but for me this is perfect. Okay, so I'm going to be starting about here. The reason being, the wall kind of dips in a little bit here. So, well, it actually dips in quite a lot. I'm sweating already just from mixing, so God help me. I'm just planning to fill the dip a little bit first. It was a workout trying to get that plastering bucket up here full. Okay, I'm going to start there, probably going to come back down and then work my way back up because this bucket is precariously placed on a step. Let's get this wall on. I'm starting in the middle of this wall because I'm trying to fill out the dip, and my idea with this is that if I put a little bit on now, I can go over it for a second time, but within the first coat. Once that part was done, I then moved back to the bottom of the stairs and worked my way from left to right, trying to work in nice, smooth, swiping movements, trying to be really neat in the corners and on the edges, and then it was on to the more challenging, awkward part of going up the stairs. I decided to not bother with adding any planks on the stairs or building any kind of scaffolding tower because I was able to reach actually a lot further than I could with my hand with the top of the trowel. I was honestly getting so warm and sweaty by this point. Okay, very quickly, the first coat is on. That was a challenge. It's taken me just over an hour to put the first coat on. Gonna mix up the second coat now. Generally, you need about half of what you used for the first coat for the second coat. So let's do that. Because the weather was so hot today, even with the extra time, by the time I'd put the first coat on, it was time to mix up for the second coat straight away. You're gonna mix the second coat in exactly the same way you mixed the first coat, but in general, you're gonna need around half the amount you needed for the first coat. You're also gonna want to add a little bit less plaster because you want this mixture to be a lot wetter. Start applying your second coat over the top of your first coat and just get the whole wall covered. Once you've got the whole wall covered, you're going to want to go over it again and again and again to try and get rid of all of the trowel marks until you're satisfied with a nice, smooth and flat finish. Okay, second coat is on, it's troweled down, and I'm really, really pleased with it. I would definitely say it's the most challenging wall I've done. You can see it's starting to dry out here in bit dribs and drabs. It's starting to pick up the plasterboard lines and things like that, but I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. It's pretty smooth. I'm really happy with it. And yeah, it was a lot of effort, don't get me wrong. I'm knackered. But yeah, the plastering is done. So yeah, I'm so pleased with that. Thank God that's over. It's a day or two later now and the wall is drying out really nicely. I will say it's drying out a lot slower than usual, probably because of the extra time in the first coat and the second coat and SBRing the plasterboards, but I don't mind. I can wait a bit longer for this to dry if it means that I've got a smooth finish and I wasn't rushed when plastering the wall. But just thought I'd give you an update on the wall and how it's looking. I'm really pleased with the finish of this. It's nice and smooth and nice and flat, which is the main thing. I just need to wait a little bit longer. You can see that this area here is really still dark because that's where I put a lot on to try and fill the dip in the plasterboards. So if you're a DIY renovator like me, this is your sign to give plastering a go. It's honestly not as hard as it looks. Take some time, watch some videos. I'm gonna link some really useful ones in the description below. Invest in some tools, do your research, have a think about what's gonna work for you. Use your extra time, seal your boards if they're old. Definitely give it a go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have any other questions, drop them in the comments below and I will get back to you. And other than that, I will see you next Wednesday for another video. Bye!